Hello, welcome to Gateway Gamers Podcast. I am your Dungeon Master, Brian, joined as always by the great, the magical
Murdoch.
Murdoch. Um, it is RP, but he is
Oh
role
yeah, sorry,
playing as
sorry.
the magical Murdoch because we finally, even though we've been talking about it for a long time, ran our first foray into Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, yeah, we did. Our dungeon master did an excellent job.
Too kind, I
Uh,
know I was awful, but
you were not
I'm proud of
full
myself.
disclose. Yeah, you should be. You did a great job. I was moments away from calling the cops
We'll get
on
into
your
it. Don't jump into it
psychotic.
yet. Don't.
All right, okay, 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 okay,
Um,
okay.
so I think I'm more way nerdier than you, like pop culture nerdy. What was like, what's
Um,
your like D&D like background though? Like, I know you never played, but what is like kind of your first like D&D kind of like memory, either seeing it in pop culture or like when it kind of jumped out to you the most?
yeah, so I have two. One obviously is I would say probably mostly everybody's is Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, yep.
That's the most common one. But then also, I think it's The Last Witch Hunter, Vin Diesel's like
Oh, okay.
pet project movie. It was terrible, but it was supposed to be like a D&D campaign because
Yeah.
he's such a huge D&D fan.
Well, that's like his character that he's been running for years. Like,
Yeah,
so that character is like his D&D character.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, so it was like bringing that to life. I don't.
Okay.
He probably had some secret on somebody or something, and he was able to get that movie made. But
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. But I would say those are my two, and then like technically, like Onward.
Okay.
Um, they have like a little bit of a D&D thing going on there. But I don't know, like I've seen it, I've heard about it. We've talked about like uh the animated project.
hmm
What was that show called?
Critical Role, like,
Critical
or
Role, Critical
it's
Hits,
Critical
whatever.
Roles Vox Machina. That's
Yes.
what it is.
Yeah, we've
Yes.
talked about that. So it's like it's I've been aware of it. I know the steps that kind of go into it. I know how you can have fun and
hmm
kind of do whatever, which I took the liberty of doing some of that in this campaign. But I've never seen anybody play. I've never really talked to anybody. I have a coworker at work that plays, and we have some friends that play, even play online
hmm
um, with each other over Zoom. But that's about my extent. How about you? Have you played before? Um,
So I've always known about D&D, like kind of through pop culture. It was in ET for like a hot minute. Like they're playing it. I think what's that show with Seth Rogen and James Franco? They're like high school
the show?
kids. It
Oh, Freaks
was
and Geeks,
Freaks
great,
and Geeks. I think it's in there
amazing show,
for
amazing
like a
show.
hot minute. They talk about it a lot in there. So it's always been around a pop culture. I always knew like, ooh, Dungeons and Dragons, and it was always there. And it was like, oh, this is interesting. But I would say until Stranger Things kind of really brought it to the forefront of like coolness of
Yeah.
like people being like, "Hey, Dungeons and Dragons." Like before, it was always like, "Nah, these dorks playing Dungeons and Dragons." Like it always had
Yeah,
that
yeah.
stigma, and I feel like Stranger Things really brought it to the forefront. The comic book shop, I think they played it here and there. They dabbled. I jumped into like a one shot little campaign, and it was fun. Like I remember, but it was very just like battle heavy
hmm
combat more than actual like role playing and like kind of what D&D entails, which is fine because I got a little taste of it, but that was kind of it. But I've always had the books. Um, I was always interested. And then we played Heroes of Arcadia in one of our trips. And like you and Bob and Shane were just like, oh, like we should role play as the characters in the game.
Oh
And then
yeah,
we're watching Lord of the
yeah.
Rings, and it just kind of like was like, oh, we should try D&D.
hmm
So it's been like 2 years of like,
1 year, 1 year.
it was only a year ago that one, that trip, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's been like, hey, we should try it. Hey, when are we gonna do this? Hey, we should try this. Um, and it just it never worked. It was a lot of work, so I've been busy with work trying to get it done. But recently they came out with the 2025 new edition of the book. So the new monster manual, the new player's handbook, and the new Dungeon Master's Guide. I grabbed all three. They're fantastic. I think the Dungeon Master's Guide for like the first 40 pages tell you how to play.
Okay.
Whereas like the book before, it was kind of like gauging, you had to know what you were doing. This one like gives you examples of like, all right, here's what a turn is like of just talking. Here's what a
Mhm.
turn is like with action. Here's what you should expect from your other players. Like it was a really well done book and it made it a lot easier to kind of be like, all right, I could do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, we've also been talking about having a Lord of the Rings day of watching all
Hmm.
the Lord of the Rings. So we planned that and then I just kind of hijacked it. It was like, hey, we're also playing D&D.
Yeah, yeah. It started out as okay, everybody's gonna come over at, 10 a.m. We're gonna watch all three Lord of the Rings extended editions and hang out to since we didn't do our previously recorded weekend this year,
Hmm.
which we do every year. It's kind of just to make up for that. So we had planned it, and then Brian just goes. He told me what was going on, and then
Yeah.
like 2 weeks beforehand, he's like, "Hey, I'm hijacking it, and it's becoming a D&D day." So we were all like, "Okay." Our one buddy Nick was like, "Are we not watching the movies now?" Like, because he wasn't sure what was going on, because we all love the movies and we're all looking forward to doing this.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, no, it was so it was a twofer. We got to game and
Hmm.
also watch the movies. And kind of to my surprise, I was like, okay, we'll watch the first one. We'll have lunch during the first one, and then we'll start it during Two Towers, and it'll be done by the time we start Return of the King.
Oof.
I think Bob had the same idea, um, but boy, was I wrong. We watched a 4 hour movie, but we had to. It was a 7 hour to almost 8 hour campaign.
Yeah,
Um,
so yeah, being my first time, I kind of miscalculated how long things would take. But the whole setup was funny because you and I haven't talked for like almost a month. There'll be days where I haven't texted you because I've been so engrossed in creating like this D&D campaign for last
I
month.
will
So
I will take my spot back, by the way.
yeah, I already did. So now that I'm texting you more, so I don't know the rules of Dungeons and Dragons that well. I didn't pretend like I knew the Dungeons and Dragons rules that well. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna make a fun campaign in the sense that each character is gonna be fun to play as. So I went heavy with creating these other things, and then what happened in the game was just kind of like, all right, we'll figure it out as we go. So for the last month, I've been creating this journal that these
Yeah, it was
players would find that would have clues for the dungeon they were going into. Our one friend said that it was psychotic.
yes, yes. And we had even had the conversation if you had like been speeding and gotten pulled
Yeah.
over by a cop and they had somehow led to searching your car, you may not have made it to our D&D Lord of the Rings day because this was crazy. This was one, the attention to detail was really impressive. Obviously, he knew what he was doing. He was creating a narrative, so he knew what he wanted to put in the book,
Hmm.
but the level of detail, there was so much writing. There were so many different types of pages. It wasn't just like a standard journal.
Hmm.
It was like more like a scrapbook made up of poems and random pages from books or postcards and cuts and it was insane. It was
Yeah.
truly insane. Like I was really, really impressed, but also a little concerned for
Yeah.
your mental well-being.
So like you guys didn't even really there was so much in there that was like wasted. And I wouldn't even say wasted because I enjoyed doing this project, but it had like a whole story of like this character you were looking for, and there was journal pages that were just journal pages of like today I did this and that and that. There was pieces in there to like the lore I was creating that was just kind of like you didn't even read. Or I said I was like, there's one page where he eats mushrooms and just trips out and
Yeah.
starts like speaking nonsense, and you guys were like, okay, but
It
the
was
main
it was
story.
it was
Go on.
tough too because there was a lot packed in there. Again, not all of it like clear and concise.
Yes, that
We had a
was a
lot of
problem.
yeah, we had a lot of people that it wasn't a problem. It was a good, crazy, like what we were
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be doing. And then just the way the book was kind of getting passed around was not the best
Yeah.
flow, I would say. We have there's in our group there was two more dominant personalities and then two more laid back,
Mm-hmm.
which were, and that's what happens. So there was just some things, and I think that down the line that actually hurt the game because Nick spoke up and made a great point that nobody heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he a couple times.
Yeah, which I
Yeah.
texted him about it the other day. I let him know that like, hey, I was like, I didn't hear that, but you did figure it out.
Yeah. So
Um,
we'll go through the characters because I thought that was fun as well. So I made the characters for everybody based on like the pre-made characters that kind of come in the Stranger Things like version of the D&D starter kit I have, but I just kind of tweaked them a bit. So you were the wizard. Nick was
yeah,
the like
like the
archer, like
yeah, he
just
was the archer.
whatever that's called, blah blah blah, the ranger. Bob was the rogue, and then Shane was the fighter. Um, so I gave everyone like their sheet stats were all filled out. They had their items, they had everything, and then I kind of took everyone aside and gave them the basic backstory. So, what was your backstory as the wizard Murdoch?
So, yeah, so my wizard, which I came up with the name Murdoch, was actually not a wizard. He was a illusionist, but mainly a con artist.
Mm-hmm.
So he had this book of spells that he stole off a dead body that you could use to use a little bit of illusion with it, and then like trick people into basically into having them pay you for what you did, or just trying to impress them. So that was the big character arc of my character.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able, I had to keep that hidden. It was not something that everybody else knew, and it was an interesting element to the game that I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled out my Harry Potter wand and was like, really playing it up. But my character also like overcomplicated everything. It was supposed to. His backstory was he was supposed to
Mm-hmm.
like complicate simple things, and not necessarily derail, you know, thought processes, but um, and that was something that I picked up and had more confidence on as we got to the end. Um, so that was kind of that was my character.
Yes. So I did that because spell casting in D&D isn't like overly confusing, but it's not like super fun for kind of the one shot we were playing. So like normally when you do a spell, you have like a certain amount of like spell slots it's called. You can only do so much magic in a day before you hit the rest. And I was like, you know what? Like I don't quite understand that, so we're just going to keep moving along. So I was like, no one else knows how magic works. So I'm
Yeah,
just
that
going to
was the
tell
benefit.
RP,
Yeah.
like, you can do whatever you want. You could cast the most bombastic spells you want, but you're actually just doing illusions, which are kind of like cantrips. You could do as much as you want in a bit,
Mhm.
in a basic sense. So it's
Yeah, and
like,
I
yeah, I cast thunder, and you could just be like, oh.
yeah, yeah, which I was doing, but I was going off of like the ones that you had put together for me. Like
Hmm.
you took pictures and like stuff, and um, as we got to the end, I was like, oh, I can just start telling these guys
Anything.
that
Yeah.
anything and like a spell. And it was funny because like I went in our first attack, I was like, oh, I'm gonna do thunder, and it missed, and then I kind of just set up, and I was rolling crappy,
Yeah.
so it kind of helped my camouflage what was going on. And it kind of became the running joke. Yeah, nothing against me, but like you suck. Like you're bad at magic, except for the one turn, which was crazy. But
Yeah, you rolled a natural 20, which should like automatically, no matter what hit. So I had to be
mhm.
like, make
Because
it
you were
up
telling
why it
me,
missed.
yeah, like you told me like no, no, that one was I thought that one was for just an attack, like it wasn't magic.
I forget. There was
Because
something
I
you rolled really well though, so I had to like lie where I
yes,
was
that would
like,
there was one where you stared at it and were like the oh crap face,
yeah.
like and but then there was one where you're like I was like I'm gonna attack this guy, and you're like you were like exasperated. You're like, fine, like go ahead. You can
Yeah.
do it. You're like, you need a 20 to do it. And I rolled a 20 and I took the guy out and it was
Hmm.
awesome. But yeah, no, it was something towards the end of the game where I started to realize it was also tough because I was trying to take everything in,
Hmm.
while also understanding like what you were doing and then also watch the movie. Like, because
Yeah.
I was very interested in, a movie I've seen a thousand times, but that's what we were there for. Like, that was the backdrop, and we were talking about everybody was talking about it. So
Hmm.
it was a lot to, it was also like we wanted to get started. So it's not like we all had like 10 or 15 minutes to sit with our character and like understand
Yeah,
it. It
yeah,
was
yeah.
like we had like a couple minutes, but everybody kind of wanted to get going. Like, we wanted to get started. So
Yeah.
I didn't have time to like fully read the book or fully read the cards that you gave me or even read like my character descriptions, like things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, which is why I picked it up as the game went along, because you did an incredible job of creating this really fun character to play as.
Hmm.
And I can't say that enough, how like the amount of effort and work you put in, I think did not go unnoticed by any of us playing.
Yeah.
Like, we were all very impressed, and
It
we
was
all
work
have
too. Like I'm not gonna try to like sugarcoat anything. It was like because Shane kept asking, he was like, "Did you get this from like a book or like what is this?" And I said, "No, like I took elements from things and just kind of like made an idea and like made these
like
characters
my
and made." And he was just like, "Whoa, like what?" Like,
yeah, yeah, because that's not like that's like I mean, this is no like insult. That's not like really how like Shane is. Like, he's
hmm,
not that creative. Like, he's good in other aspects of
yeah,
life where he's not necessarily the most creative, but where you are incredibly creative. And you see it in on the Instagram, you see it in the way that you host the show, and things you do previously recorded, things we talk about all the time.
hmm,
Like, you think of great ideas, and like you have a natural brain for this, and it's also like why you're good at your job too,
yeah,
because you have to be creative with younger students
yeah, yeah,
and things of that nature. So I want you to know how much, like, even though I was like, it was long, I
yes,
want you to
we,
know how much like we had fun, and I appreciated the amount of effort. You did it for yourself, but you did it for us too.
hmm,
So
yeah, I
I want you to know that.
no, I know. I trust me. I knew everyone was having fun, but I also knew toward the end, I think we were all get burnt out. We'll definitely talk about that.
Part of
Um,
that too is I hate my freaking table. My table
oh,
gets so uncomfortable. And like, I was just so
I'll buy a new
uncomfortable
table and
by
we'll.
the end. Like, the table length is perfect. The chairs suck. We've tried to find like better chairs. They're expensive, and it's just like so like 7 hours at that table
Yeah,
is brutal on the body.
yeah. The next character was Nick, running as the Ranger, half elf Ranger. My idea for this character was that he loved animals, like worshipped animals, like kind of like a hunter and wolf, or not a wolf, but a hunter and an elf kind of would, like generally. But I gave him like this insatiable hunger as well. Like at one point, I was like, you ate something that's kind of possessing you, and you have this like unnatural desire to eat stuff. And then when you do, you have like this essence devour that like you eat something and it gives you like a temporary boost in power or like kind of like a quick ability that you kind of gain. So with that, I bought like a bunch of jerky and a
Yeah,
bunch of
this was
like
awesome.
weird foods and put them in
So,
jars, labeled them weird animals.
so there was one, Nick had like an ability where he could heal
Hmm.
Nicolas, because
Yeah,
he struggled to come up with a name,
which
and
God
you kept
bless him. You know
forgetting.
what? Like I will say, like I give a lot of props to Nick, and Nick really helped me out. Like without him realizing it, where I got everything out, I gave you guys character sheets, I talked about your backgrounds with you, and then we all sat down to start, and it was like the where you guys were meeting, so you're introduced to each other, and he was just like, he's like, I can't think of a name, and everyone's like, Nick, like it's just a name, dude. Like this is the easy part, and he vocalized like Marvel, like I'm out of my element here. Like
Yeah,
this isn't comfortable for me.
yeah,
And like it wasn't for me either. Like I think Bob's super outgoing, like Shane's super outgoing, you're outgoing, and like I am to a certain degree, like you kind of seen me, but like I was like nervous kind of starting and him vocalizing that, like I'm like, all right, like I really appreciate that he's here. And it just
yeah,
put me in like a space where I was like, and I said to him, I was like, I am too, man. Like, let's do this. And I think we
yeah.
both just kind of like clicked from there.
Yeah, and he did an excellent job.
He was
He did a
awesome.
really
Yeah.
good job. And the thing about Nick is he wants to make sure he's always making the correct decision. So that will lead him to,
Hmm.
maybe overthink some things like the name. So he wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that he had a fun name and like it went with the vibe and matched like what we were doing. And like you said, it was out of his element. So Shane was just like Nicholas, like
Yeah.
Legolas, because he had a bow. And we were like, that's perfect. And then you kept, it's literally his name, and you kept forgetting Nick's name in the
Yeah.
game, Nicholas. It was very funny.
Nicholas.
So
He was
yeah.
about him healing you at one point.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So he had the ability to heal,
A healing touch, it was called.
yeah, but he had to
He
eat the
had to,
jerky.
yeah, he had to eat like elf tongue or something weird like that.
Yeah, and it was like he couldn't eat it, like I had to eat it. And you would not tell me what it was. So I was like, I'm not eating. Like I was like, and if
Hmm.
it smelt different, it felt different, and you would not tell me what it was for like 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm like, look, I'm going to eat it. Just tell me what it is.
Hmm.
And eventually you were like, it's fruit jelly
Yeah, it's
or
just a
fruit
jerky.
jerky. Yeah, yeah.
And my
And
favorite part of that
it
was
was
you
delicious.
you ate it. Nick had to eat it, not
That's
you.
what it was. That's what it was. Yeah,
Nick had
Nick
to
had
eat it
to.
to gain like the essence to get the power. So I'm sitting there like laughing because you're like, I'm gonna eat this. What is it? And I'm laughing because I'm like, he's gonna eat it. It's not gonna do anything. That's
Yeah.
not what the power is. So you took a bite. You're like, oh, delicious. And I was like, Nick, you get the. He's like, oh yeah, that's right. But I also gave Nick like a little psychotic journal too. That
Which
was
was cool.
like,
It had like blood spray on it. It was
but
awesome.
it was his like hunt journal where it was whatever he ate, he would describe how it tastes. So some things it was like fairy, ate in one bite, screamed the whole time. And like it was just like psychotic, but then it was like gains this ability. And then it was funny because at one point I think Shane was like looking at the journal and then he saw like toward the back it said like human ate that child, didn't remember when. And Shane was like, were we supposed to see that? And I'm like, I can't stop you. And
Yeah,
Nick's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, man goes to the bathroom and for 2 seconds, comes back and you
Yeah.
go through his stuff.
Yeah, Nick was on, dude, Nick was on point.
Yeah. He
He
was
was,
he was like really combo and stuff where he's like, "Can I eat this?" and then like do that. I'm like, "Absolutely." Or like he was really like I don't want to say
yeah,
overthinking, but he was thinking his character through where he's like, "I'm going to eat
he,
this and I'm going to do this."
yeah, it's not like I said overthinking, but it's not. It's he wants to have the best outcome possible.
Hmm.
And if that means taking a little bit of extra time and asking more questions, he's going to take it because
Yeah.
he's all in. Like he
Yeah.
is all in and he sees your effort and everything like that. Um, and I think like he's interested to do it again. But that
Okay.
was also the sad point of like all this work you did.
Yeah.
It cannot
It'll
be reused.
I will never do that much work again.
And nothing can be because there was also on top of the characters, there was also letters we got.
Mm,
None of this stuff can be reused, which is
yeah.
crazy to
I'm
me
going
as
to make
well.
like a little chest of just our first campaign together, something stupid. Where I'm like, I don't want to waste this stuff because it looks cool. But so the next character was Shane's character. He played as Ragnar Padfoot, which was
Yeah.
awesome because he took the backstory I gave him and gave it like his name because I took
So
him as
he brought this up to me and I said, you used the wrong name.
not
Pad
really.
Padfoot is serious.
Yeah, I know, but he still
Moon,
he
yeah, it was clever. It was
yes.
absolutely clever. Something that he's not. Like it's
Hmm.
I was like Ragnar Mooney would have been
Yeah.
the nod that no, I would not have picked up on.
Yeah.
Because when he said
So
that, I was like, why is he using Padfoot? I was like,
it's
he put
it
that
worked though. I
name.
was like, oh, that's cool. Like he used the name. So I took Shane aside and I said, oh, like you're like a wayfarer traveler. I was like, you don't have much on you except like your weapon's a tree club because you have like what is it like lycanthropy? You're a werewolf. I can never say the word like
Uh,
lycanthropy or whatever it's called.
what?
Lycanthropy. What is it's like lycanthropy is
I have
like
no
when you're a
idea.
werewolf.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're a lichen, but it's called like I'm gonna edit this out. But he was a werewolf essentially. He was
Yes.
possessed as a werewolf, and I smartly like said to him, and he was smart to ask, where he said like, is that going to come up? Like, are we under a full moon? And I said, so this campaign is 1 day. And I was like, it's mostly you're inside temple, so you're not going to see the moon. I said, but how people react to you if you say you're a werewolf might affect the game. Because I also gave Nick the backstory of wanting to eat a werewolf in his little
Yes.
psycho journal.
Yes.
I meant to give Bob's character that his dad was killed by a werewolf, but forgot. But I was just like, all right. So in my head, I'm like, all right, Shane could keep it a secret. He'd kind of like go with this. And he kept it a secret the whole game. Halfway through the dungeon, in one of the rooms, like one of the murals was the moon, a full moon, and it was like
Mhm.
pulsing. So I had these cultists in there that solved the puzzle already, and they were like, "Ah, you ain't nothing. You're idiots. You're fools. Like we're the best."
You,
And then
you
like
ain't nothing but a hound dog.
I was like, "Oh," and then one of your characters begins to breathe heavy, and I looked at Shane, and like he didn't click for him like at all. And I was like, and then you transform into a werewolf, and I changed his swap piece out with a werewolf piece. And like I could tell Shane was like, "Ah, you dirty dog." He was like, "You told me it wouldn't come up," and I was like, "Well, here it is."
Yep.
And
So that was a lot of fun though. That map was when I rolled that 20
mm.
to have that like crazy hit.
Oh yeah, I so you guys could have ran out, but you
Yeah,
guys
which
kept fighting, and I was like, I was like, you guys are gonna die in this room. I was like, I can't
yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
anything,
Yep.
and I
Because
thought you were a fool, but you did it.
well, somebody did fall.
Yep.
Which this was a whole conundrum too, because we were like, is the werewolf dead in like dead?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, once he leaves, he'll come back. And I'm like, it wasn't making sense to me. But I was like,
Yeah. So
Shane's
the whole like the werewolf thing, I had to like homebrew because it's not a character you could play as, but it's a
it was fun.
super powerful monster that I had to kind of be. So my idea for it was when Shane transformed, he had to roll for control. So it was like if he got a 10 or less or 10 or above, he had control. But every time he got control, it got harder. So
Yeah.
then he would have to roll an 11 or below, like to lose control. It didn't really come up because he was so strong. He was just ripping everybody apart.
Yeah, but he did eventually fall and we
He rolled
did
a one.
win.
He rolled a
Yeah.
natural one, so I just had him like trip.
So Nick was like, we won. Nick was like, well, it's on my book to eat a werewolf. And then that led to a big debate. And Shane and Nick were like yelling at each other. Shane was like, this guy ate children. And then we're like, well, you're a werewolf. He's like, I need to eat the werewolf. This was like a 5 or 10 minute
He
like
was
debate.
like, he's like, if I just take like a nibble,
Yeah.
do I get
And
his
I,
powers?
And that's what I was saying. I was like, eat, what about just his leg? And I was like, do it. Go ahead, eat him. And then I was like, then you were like, no, he'll be dead, but
Hmm.
he can get out of the room because we thought he was dead.
Yeah.
Then
Well,
you were
then
like,
Nick also said, which none of you guys, I don't think anyone paid attention. He was like, well, the mural's what's transformed him. He's like, can I blow it up or like shoot at it? And I said, you could try. But basically, like, if he would have shot the arrow at it, the moon would have been gone. Like, I'm like, damn. I was like, Nick's once again speaking up with sense, and everyone's just
yeah,
kind of moving around. And then Bob just turned invisible, like, tried to run out of the room. That's really odd. I was like, because he should be pissed at a werewolf. And then I was like saying to him, yeah, I was like, he's a werewolf. He's like, yeah, I know, I'm getting out of the room. But you don't like werewolves. He's like, what? Where'd that come from? And I forgot to give him the backstory that like his dad got killed by a werewolf, and I was gonna have Shane's be the guy who killed his dad, and like
that would
that
have been cool.
conundrum at the end of what do you guys do? But I completely forgot. So Bob's like, hey, he's a werewolf. What am I supposed to
But we ended the discussion with Shane will not be eaten.
do?
And I said because he's having too much of a good time and
Yeah.
actively engaging, that would be sad if he was out
Yeah,
of
he
the
would have
game.
been out. So then Bob's character, even though I forgot to give him backstory, was Darwin Longfellow. He was a lightfoot halfling rogue. And the gimmick that I gave him was that he had a bag of holding, which in the game has special rules that I don't know because I didn't feel like really looking into them. But I gave him a little bag. I drew the bag of holding, and I put 50 like slips of paper in there, and it was 50 objects. I put five were like extremely powerful, like either weapons or items, 10 normal items, and then the rest was junk. Usable junk, like if you really played the part. And I think he just kind of like forgot he had it. Cause like at one point he was like, I'm just gonna draw from the bag, and he pulled like this awesome sword power.
Yeah.
But then like another time put out magnified glass. He's like, can I use this? And I was like, well, what do you want to do with it? He's like, I don't even know what to do with it. I was like, all right. So it was like a fun idea, but I just don't think it got utilized enough to its full potential. And also,
A lot of that was like there was a lot there was a lot
I
going
think
on.
I overthought that idea where it's like I should have put maybe some more powerful things in there or like some more useful things, more than on in the heat of the battle. I'll be like, hold on, guys, I got like a crayon,
Yeah.
like or so just be like, womp womp womp.
And
But
I think that was part of the overarching day where it was a
mm,
little bit later. We were trying to watch Lord of the Rings
yeah,
and actively participate. I will say, like, it was probably like Bob and I kind of doing 50-50, like movie
mm-hmm,
and then I think Shane and Nick were like 100% like in.
mm, yeah.
Like,
It's just I will say
I would say I was like 75-25. I would say that
I
75 in the
think
game.
this took longer. The campaign itself to play took longer than even I anticipated. I was like, all right, this will be like a 2 hour, 3 hour thing. But I think having the movie on also didn't help because I'd be like, guys would stop and look, and I had my back to the movie, so I was never distracted by
Yeah.
it. Where
But
there was certain points where I was just sitting there and I'm just like, all right, just wait for everyone to
yeah.
get back in.
Well, also some of that too is like us not knowing what to do.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So we'll talk about that too because I think that was a bit of it as well.
yeah, like
So,
like I wouldn't say it was the movie because like I don't think I watched much of Two Towers. Like I
hmm
watched as much as I can. I think it was just a lot going on. I think it was
yeah,
overwhelming, and I think we were all committed. It was just we didn't necessarily know what to do. Like we were standing in the first map.
hmm
We were kind of standing around looking at each other
hmm
because we didn't know we never played before. We didn't
Yeah,
know
and
that.
I was like, I don't know how to get this engaged as well. So we'll start off like I had you guys meet in a bar area, which I was very impressed. That's when like you guys were like all cylinders working together, like really started moving things along where I was like, oh, okay, this is working. Like I was so excited. I was like, oh, okay, like they're actually engaging. And so you guys met in a town, you were all given letters from this benefactor who wanted you to find his lost son. Each of you guys had like a different letter, like Shane's was like, you're a freak, like we know you're a werewolf freak, find our kid or we'll out you.
Mhm.
Bob's was real nice. Like the whole letter was like, please find my son. Like I love him so much. And then it was like, we only need his journal. Kill everyone you need to. And then yours was like, we know you're a charlatan. If you
Yeah, like
don't,
if you double cross us, we'll reveal
yeah.
that you are fake.
Yeah. And then Nick's was like, just Master Hunter, please find my son. Because he had nothing bad really. So I had you guys meet in a bar in this town with one NPC bartender because I don't know how to run the game. I was like, I'm not gonna put like 8 people in the bar and like try to interact with that. So you guys were interacting with this one bartender, asking all the right questions, everything you needed. At one point, you guys were, can we look at his room? And I was like, yes, this is what I wanted. Like, I want these are the clues that I need. Where if you guys were like, all right, let's go on an adventure, I was like, all right, like you might have missed these little details that you kind of needed. And then I also had to back up that the bartender was a vampire in case somebody was like, I want to attack her. Like
Oh yeah, yeah,
I had a fight ready. And then from there, I just kind of moved you guys along because I don't know how travel works. Where I was like, all right, all of a sudden you're walking through the forest
yeah, yeah.
and you come across this body.
But that whole thing was like 20-30 minutes because maybe about 15 minutes because we
Yeah,
were all like asking questions but very
how
piecemeal
things work. Yeah.
and we were figuring it out, which is fine. We were just figuring it out.
hmm
And again, I don't want you to think like the length is like necessarily a negative. You put all
hmm
this work in, so I'm glad we did take the time. It was just something that was unexpected and I
Yeah.
wasn't counting on it, but it didn't mean it wasn't fun.
No, I take no offense because it was
Yeah.
long for me. It took longer than I anticipated.
Yeah, yeah.
From there, you guys moved on to this road. On the side of the road, you saw a body in like a
Yeah, and that's
pit.
where performed
Yes,
my
your
first missing thunder, which was
giant
fun.
magic spell. You guys all went down the pit. You were ambushed by goblins. I kind of had one lead goblin and then like a bunch of minions. You guys were all attacking. Nicolas got surrounded by all the goblins, and then you killed like the leader goblin, and then the rest of
Yes.
them ran, which was what I intended. I was
Yeah,
like, all
but
right,
we killed him after we realized we probably should have kept him alive
yeah, you
to
could have.
question him
Yeah,
and stuff. So it was like I said, it was figuring things
yeah.
out.
And then you guys searched the body. Even though I turned the page, it was moving on. Bob was like, hey, I want to search that body. And I was like, oh, crap. Like, I needed you guys to search a body. So that's where you found the journal. And that's where I was like, I was giddy because you
Yeah.
guys were like, look at this journal. Like, what is this? And Shane was writing stuff down. Bob was writing stuff down. At one point, Shane was like, this is like a Goonies thing. Like, I'm sure if we put this up to like one of the pages, it has like a secret message. And I was like, oh my God, like he's figuring it out. So, and then from there, you guys found the
There was this
temple.
yeah, there was a cipher in
Yeah.
the journal. There was a lot to decipher, and it
Oh,
was
I had
crazy.
like, three different codexes, three different messages. It was the whole thing was like this the boy that you found this book about this elemental temple that only appears once every millennia. And he found Master Solin's book, and the book was empty, but it talks to him. So he's writing stuff down, and he's finding letters. He's killing cult members to get
Yeah, it was
information. So it's all these hidden letters. At one point, like there was like a map that like Bob was obsessed with. He was like, I feel like this is important. I don't know. And I had to be like, sometimes a map is just like a map. He was like, gotcha. Because I was like, it was just flavor I put in a book, but he was like, I feel like this is something. And I was like, I don't want him wasting his time trying to decipher this. So yeah, you found some Koningsberg like thing that I just put again, just flavor I put in there, and you were like, yeah, something, this has to be something. I looked at you and like Bob's, yeah, sometimes a map is just a map. Like
that
he
was
and
at the end, yeah.
I was like, yeah. So from there you found this temple, this elemental
But then
temple. You
I found something else in that cipher that helped with the end. It helped with the trees
Yeah, so we'll
at the
talk about
end.
that. Yeah, we get there. So I had you guys go in this temple. It was just a tower in the middle of four doors, nothing overly complicated. And each room was an element of like water, fire, wind, and earth. So I just said like, what door do you want to go into? You guys went to the fire door, and I think the first puzzles where things started to like break down a little bit. Puzzles were not the way to go. So you guys went in, and it was just like a lava filled room with like four candles. And I think the problem is you guys did great like figuring out the puzzles where Shane was like, yeah, like I think it has to do with the order of the fire. And I had a picture and a whole riddle in the book, but you guys couldn't figure out like how to light the candles. And you were doing all the right things. We were like, can we inspect the candle? I'm like, yeah, it's a candle. Like it just there wasn't anything I could give you more. So and then these elemental like animals came, and it was supposed to be more of a fight, but Bob brought up a good point that I wrote in my own journal where these animals couldn't be hit with a sword. Where
Oh yeah.
he's like, they can't be slashed or hit. I don't know how to attack them. And I went, oh no, I wrote myself into a corner here because you
Yeah.
guys didn't have real magic because you weren't a magician,
I
which brought
know.
up an amazing element that you did.
Yeah, with the ice.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the spells Brian had written in like this journal that nobody else was allowed to see was my spell like fake spell journal, and it was like ice,
Like
this ice chilling touch that can
chilling touch. Yep.
put frost on blades, and it was like charge for it. So I was like, I like before we went into the room, I was like, is anybody? We didn't know it was fire. I think before we knew it
You
was
know
fire,
it's
whatever.
fire. Yeah.
I was like, does anybody want their blade iced? And Shane was like, no. I'll see it when I get there. And I said, all right. And then Bob's like, maybe. And then we get inside. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And Bob's like, yeah, I want you to ice my blade. And I was like, all right, I'll do it, but for a price. And he's like, what do you want? And I was like, 1 shekel. And he's like, take it. Like we haven't even used the
Yeah. The
shekels.
gold was just there for flavor at it.
And it was fun though.
Yeah.
then Bob was like, "You're a scumbag." Like he's like, "Murdoch's a scumbag sleazeball." He's like, "He's bad at magic." And then he like missed, and like the ice did nothing because
Well,
there was
he didn't
so
even
much.
use it. Yeah, like because I said to him later, I was like, even if you swung that sword, it would have done nothing. I was like, because he didn't know magic, and you were just like you were into the character where you were like, like doing all these things, and you're like, now your magic blade is attuned, and I'm sitting there like just giggling because I'm like, this ain't gonna do nothing.
And they didn't know.
Yeah.
They didn't know, but Shane was like, Shane wouldn't go for it. Nick was fine, and then Bob did it, and
Yeah.
it was funny.
So yeah, it was supposed to be a battle, and then when you like hit the creatures, they would explode. The the creatures were I painted them like red, blue, yellow, and white.
Oh, you painted them?
Yeah, I painted them.
Oh, wow.
And you needed to like move them to the candle in the right order. So like the one candle was supposed to be lit red. You had to kill one of the animals that was red near it to explode. It wasn't going as planned, so I just had the animals explode. Like they would go near you, explode. So you guys still figured it out pretty quickly. We were like, all right, this blue thing lit up this candle, but didn't light up this other. I think we need to get them. So you guys all kind of huddled together. Everything exploded. The door lit up.
Well,
It didn't work great. Oh
well,
yes, we'll talk about the amazing feat that you performed. So it
yes.
didn't work to what I wanted to happen, but it still worked. Like you guys figured out the puzzle, it just didn't work out, which I thought was still fun, but I was like, all right, puzzles are a little wonky. And then another puzzle later we'll talk about
Yeah.
also got a little wonky. But yeah, you performed an amazing feat.
Yeah. So I had rolled magic. I couldn't do anything at this point, and I like still had one roll left. So I was like, "Can I roll to kiss?" The what were they?
It was a
The
phoenix.
elemental,
I
the
called them
phoenix.
animals, but it was a phoenix looking thing.
And I said, "Can I roll to kiss it?" And you were like, "Sure, go ahead. You have to roll." And I rolled the dice. I think I rolled like a five because it was the six-sided die.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're like,
No, you kept rolling a six-side die. It was always
uh,
supposed to be a 20, but you, for whatever reason, just grabbed six. But yeah, like
well,
in my
because
head,
there was like the 20 die, and then you were making me roll again with the six. So
when you
I just
attacked,
yeah. So I just grabbed the
yeah.
six.
But yeah, I was just like, sure, roll the 20-side die, add charisma. So you
Yeah,
rolled, and then you were successful. You
I
kissed the
was.
little phoenix, and
I
it
kissed
did.
the phoenix, and it did nothing but burn
Yep.
my
It
lips.
looked, I said it looked confused.
But then that became a running bit
Yeah,
um, through
so
the game.
we finished that room.
But that was the beauty of the D&D, like being
Yeah.
able to do like weird and random
Hmm.
stuff like that,
And that's
because
what
I
you
was a
remember.
hack. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
all these stupid things we remember. So and then you guys finished that room, you got a fire ring, and there was a potion outside the room. You moved on to the next room. I think th- you did the room next. You went through the room. It was completely empty except for a mirror in the middle.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and if the room was like silent, you weren't supposed to be able to talk, just like gesture, and that was it. But you guys missed that part of it.
Oh,
But
Jesus.
I'll give it to you once again. Shane and Bob and you and Nick like used the puzzle codex I gave you well. You kept reading what to do, but you just couldn't get there. And that was the problem with that puzzle where I'm like, I was like, they know what they're doing, but I can't guide them like any further. So the mirror was just like in the middle of the room. If you looked in the mirror, you see your reflection, but also there was a treasure chest, like kind of
Mhm.
beyond where there wasn't in the room. So you guys knew you had to go through the mirror, but whenever you walked to it, your character was just there. And it did everything you did. So you swung a sword, it swung a sword. You did this, you did that. It did
You
what you
kiss
did.
it.
Once again, if you want your amazing feat in this room,
I kissed it. I kissed
he
myself
rolled to kiss, so he kissed himself.
because it said to be nice.
Yeah, so my idea was if you went to the mirror with aggression, it would block you. It would agitate and like whatever. And I gave him like this puzzle. It said like whatever, like oh, be nice and blah blah blah. My idea was you guys would have to be like after you, like that kind of gesture, and then you'd be able to walk in. You guys were doing great. You're like we're
We
waving at it,
said
we're kissing it.
everything. We
Yeah,
said everything except
yeah,
for after you,
yeah. So I went,
which was in your defense. It was in your book. Your journal
yeah,
literally wrote out like what to say.
yeah. So I
You
was
wrote
like,
some like crazy poem.
I was like, all right. I was like, and in my head, I'm like, they're there. So they're still engaged. They're doing correctly. It's just maybe I wrote myself into another hole, like another corner here. You guys did it. You were able to walk through the mirror. You got the next ring, moved on, yada, yada. The next room, you were like, ah, should we do earth or
Water.
water? And I'm like, please, please just go through water. And he was like, all right, we'll go through water. Because at this point, I could tell we were all starting to like wind down. But I was like, I want to do this werewolf stuff so bad. So you
Right.
guys went into this area. There was the air cultists were already in there. They're like, we're superior. You guys stink. We already solved this puzzle. We're gonna solve the rest of the puzzles and like achieve the ultimate goal over everyone. So that's where the mural of the moon was in there, and it was
Hmm.
pulsing, and you werewolfed out. My journal had the whole solution to this room. I had this room made out, but like I was like, I want to add this a werewolf element in. So like
Yeah.
I completely ignored that. So that was just like a fun room. You guys killed the leader of the air elemental, his little cultists, and then you guys dipped out. You got the next ring. There was a random potion sitting outside the door. The earth one is also another puzzle where I went, ah, they're solving it. It's just they're not like I wrote it too much to be too specific. So you guys went into a room. It was a giant glade of like grass and wood
Uh-huh.
area, and there
Yeah.
was these stumps that I had, and I wrote Fey language. In the journal, I had a Fey codex, but you guys were just stuck. You were doing everything right where you were like, we inspect the stump, we hit the stump, we're doing this, we're doing that. You just couldn't figure out where to go, but you knew what to do. Bob was writing out all the Fey language you found, whatever. I think this is the point where everyone just kind of lost and got frustrated and like we're burnt out because even you grabbed the journal and we're going through it, and that's when you found this like hidden like
Yeah.
you ripped a page apart and there was and you were like, look at this, it's Fey language. And threw it at Bob, and then you guys again solved the puzzle where you wrote like, oh, it says wither, but then you couldn't figure out what to do next, and that's when I had to be like, imagine you're a kid, what would you do with a stump? But you're like, oh, jump on it. So
Yeah.
you guys had to jump in the correct order to have a spell wither to do the vines.
Yeah. I like found that and I found like the order that they had to go.
Yeah.
So that was when I actually got time with the journal.
Hmm.
So yeah.
That's when I could feel like, all right, I need to wind this down. Like I need to kind of like fast pass this a bit. So
Yeah.
at that point, you left that room. You got the Earth key or out Earth ring, and then there was another random bottle outside the room. The middle tower formed a door. You're able to go in. You went in, and you found like a body just kind of in there. This is where the journal had a whole backstory that no one knew. This guy was super important. You didn't read one page of his backstory and why this guy was here and why he was so important. So this was the heart of the Earth Temple that I kind of made. This was a previous like traveler that found this temple because my idea was one of you guys are going to have to take the place. Now that you kind of found it, you guys were going to have to sacrifice one of your members to take the place of this guy. You guys didn't know any of that, so you didn't care. Like this guy meant nothing. Where I was like, all right, F it. Like we're gonna move
Yeah.
along, kind of. All the four potion bottles that you guys were finding were placed by the bad guys to make a
Mhm.
mixture to give to the body to turn them into this new scary element that you would have to fight. You guys poured the potions on the floor
Yep. We
in the
still, well, you
wrong
had like these
spots.
circles, and we were like, we should just stand on there and pour them.
Yeah,
And we made the right decision. We made the
yeah.
group made a
So
right decision.
So it was a good idea. It just wasn't like what was supposed to happen. But as you said, you foiled the bad guy's plan. So and then this decrepit spider robot bad guy came in who was dying, who needed this element to reshape himself and live again, and then like take the heart of the temple. At this
And
point, we were
we,
so done. Like
but
you
also,
guys and me.
yeah, but I don't know if you made this up then, because after we poured it, you were like, well, the elementals bailed, and then it was just the old decrepit man.
Yes, completely
Because we
made
were
up.
so
It was supposed to be
okay.
more of a fight. Yep. So once it was kind of fail, this guy rolled in all decrepit, and then like three bodyguards. But I went, I was like, oh no. The other cults was like, well, this didn't work. We're out of here, and I had to walk away. So and then I had Nicolas roll. He got the top initiative. He rolled
It
and
was
killed him
so
because
funny. He said he had the kill shot,
yeah.
and he goes, "How should I do it?" And
Oh,
we
yeah,
were
so this
like,
is an element that I took from Critical Role and Matt Mercer and all. So like normally the DM kind of describes what happened, like you kill, but like he likes to let the players decide how. So like whenever you guys rolled a 20 or like had like a kill shot, I'm like, all right, you
"Yes,
get the
yes, you
killing
did."
blow. How do you do it? And
But
some of
you
you
also
guys
you let me do it too because I blew up the goblin's head,
yeah.
and Nick was like, "I needed that," and
He
I
was
was
like,
like,
I
"Oh,
wanted
I'm
to
sorry."
eat that guy, and you
Yeah,
exploded him.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so at the end, like Nick got the kill shot. He rolled with his bow and arrow, and I went, Nick, you killed him. How are you gonna do it? He was like, what do you? I don't know what you mean. Da, da, da.
yeah. And I was like, and we were so tired.
Yes,
We were like, I was like, Nick.
just
I was like,
anything.
buddy, just anything. I was like, just anything. So he decided to go with the bow and arrow, and he
I
took him
just
out.
shot him in the eye. Yeah, and I went, all right, you guys saved the world. Congrats, and
Yeah.
ended it. Where it's like, there was a little bit more, but even I was like, this needs to end a bit.
Mhm.
So I think for our first like foray into D&D, me as a dungeon master and you as players, I had a blast.
Yeah.
But I think like I I learned to like tone it down. Like I was a little bombastic, even with the battles. The first goblin battles, like two of you almost died on the first fight, where I was like, "Ooh, you guys do they do more damage than I thought." Like I either should have gave you more HP or had you level like a little higher. Where I
Sure.
was like, "Ooh, this is gonna be a tough campaign because we're fighting cultists and everything, and you guys are dying
Right.
from goblins." And then yeah, I think tone it down. I think less puzzles next time. Like maybe like one puzzle, or at least if I do puzzles, don't make them so specific. Like you kissing the mirror, yeah, it let you through. Like something like that. Like I think would have worked.
Maybe something that is like that was unexpected and funny would have
Yeah.
won you over. And as the dungeon master, okay,
Yeah, I need to let myself go there. I will
or just
say,
less rooms too. Like if you're that was it.
yeah,
Like if the obviously it was the narrative, Earth, Wind, Water,
yeah, yeah.
Fire, obviously, but that would have done it too. So like the final battle would have been like one or two rooms, and then the final
Hmm.
battle. It would have saved like an hour and a half probably.
Yeah, something like that. I'll say though, so this may turn some people off. I use ChatGPT to help me a lot with like some of the descriptive text where it's like I had everything, I had a lot of things, but like I wanted to really describe what was happening. So I would turn to ChatGPT, like I need this, this, and this. It would be like, and then the glade and all this wild stuff. Toward the end, I wasn't even reading that. Like I was more comfortable just describing.
Yeah,
So I think that would save time as well. Like so I was proud of myself for that. Toward the end, I was like being more descriptive and like getting into it more.
I don't think
Um,
there's anything wrong with using you. One, you're not an author. Two, it's your
hmm.
first time.
Yeah, but just some
There's
people
no
just AI, and I get it. I'm not gonna like
yeah, but
poo-poo
I
if
mean
people are like, use ChatGPT or whatever, but
yeah, but it was a group of five of us. So it's
yeah.
not like you were profiting off of it or
Yeah,
it
no,
was for your own enjoyment.
it
Like
was for
it's
my own
just
comfort, honestly. Like that's what it
yeah,
was. I was like, all right, I want to have like a good narrative and comfort. But like I said, toward the end, I got comfortable enough where I wasn't even reading it. So it
yeah.
like it was there, but like I'm just saying like
I
for
hear you.
me, it
I
was a
hear you.
nice goal to be like, oh, like I really didn't need this. Like next time
Yeah.
I won't need this as much. So how do you feel overall with our campaign? How do you feel about D&D as a whole? Would you
Yeah, well I've I've spewed uh how impressed I was with the
mm,
campaign that you made and how much I did have fun. Um 10 out of 10, highly recommend. It's something I've always wanted to do, and I finally got to do it with my closest friends. Um, and I was comfortable the whole time because I don't have a problem being an idiot and saying like,
mm,
goofy stuff. So I had a great time. It was a lot of fun. it was just a little bit longer than I anticipated, and I think
Yeah.
that's not necessarily your fault, but it's also mine because I had a idea of what it would be and how long it
Mm-hmm.
would be. But that doesn't take away from the fun I had or anything like that. I think it was good, and I would absolutely do it again. And
Mm.
if we do previously recorded weekend again, I anticipate having this.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say
And
if this is something that even you have an inkling of trying, like um I can't think of the company offhand, but there are companies that go to like bars and do like one shots. So you can get
dungeon
it. Yeah,
Dungeons
Dungeons
and
Drafts.
Drafts,
Dungeons and
yeah,
Drafts is the one in our area. I'm sure every area has like one of these.
which we were supposed to do, and then
My wife got sick. Again, ruins
yeah,
everything always. So like look around. Like I'm sure there's libraries. Like there's clubs and whatnot. And even if you're not comfortable doing that, like just ask your friends. Like, hey, do you guys want to do this? And people are interested. Like I think more people are interested than not. And I will say, like the Dungeons and Dragons like books, Monster Manual, the Player's Handbook, and the Dungeon Master Guide, they're at the library. You don't have to
yeah.
buy them. You can rent them out. There's enough
I,
stuff online that you can find.
Yeah,
But
and ask the people around you because
mm,
until we actually did it, I had gotten my brother-in-law makes mead, so I was like, "Oh, perfect. This is on theme for the day for
mm,
D&D." And he's like, "Oh, he was like, you guys are playing D&D." I talked to my brother-in-law about everything under the sun, like
mm,
everything. I one of my closest friends as well. I had no idea he had an interest in playing. So
mm,
if we had given him enough time, he would have been interested in playing and came down and hung out with us that day. But this, like I said, this is somebody I know so well that I had no idea he had an interest in. So,
mm.
like I said, if you're looking for people, actually ask. Don't just assume that people are not interested
Yeah.
because your closest friends, you guys may have never talked about it, but they may have an interest.
Yeah, then I like even like there's websites where because having a dungeon master is hard thing. Nobody wants to do the dungeon master job sometimes because like you're not playing, you're
Did
not really engaged.
did you enjoy that and not getting to engage like we did? Did you enjoy being the dungeon master?
Yeah, I did. Like I enjoyed because you guys were playing something I created, which is what we talked about before, which is why I enjoyed the podcast so much. Like I love creating and like seeing things work and people enjoying things. So that's like a bit of my thing. But if I had the chance to play, like I would have really enjoyed it as well. But I liked it really gave me something watching you guys enjoy it so much. And like I said, the journal with you tinkering, you were super excited when I told you your backstory of being a magician
Yeah,
who wasn't
yeah, I
a
was.
wizard. So like that kind of stuff, like it gave me like a jolt where I didn't mind being this job.
Yeah,
But like if you were like one day we're just like, you know what, like I want to try doing that, I'd be like, all right, cool. Like I wouldn't be like, no, that's my job. Like
yeah,
never.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'd be like, okay, like let's try it out. And I would
Problem
probably enjoy it
is,
just as much. But
problem is, I don't know if anybody is besides you is going to put that level of
well,
commitment
like I
into.
said, never again. That was
Yeah,
from now on we are doing starter kit stories, which is another thing I want to bring up. Um they have a Stranger Things starter set they made, which I found cheap for like $11, and it has which we probably should have played because that probably is like an hour campaign. It's a in-depth story. It has pre-made character sheets. You just play whatever. At this point, they have two starter kits for D&D. One is like Stormwreck Isle, and then there's another like the Mines of Philanthropy or whatever. And it has everything you need. It has the dice. It has character sheets. It has a book. It just doesn't give you like the full rules, but it's there. And then supposedly there's another one coming up in September that's supposed to be like the my first like D&D campaign. It's supposed like they said like this is for people that have never played. Like
okay.
they so I'm very excited for that one to kind of come out to kind of grab it and play now that we have an idea to see like oh this is easy or we played this completely wrong which
We
I
had
don't think we
fun.
did. We had fun, and that's what I wanted.
I don't think there's a
That
wrong.
so that was my goal was just even if I there were times where I'm like I don't know just roll do
Yeah,
something
yeah.
and we'll figure it out. And I did. There was so much stuff I made up just on the fly, but you would never know because you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I had a screen, so you couldn't see. I was just rolling, just whatever. But we had fun, and I think that's just the point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, like I said, for our first foray into D&D, it will not be our last. I had an absolute blast. I will say, if you are curious, look into it, try it. Even if you don't dive full in, there's other people that want to try it, and you can just at least say, like, hey, I tried D&D.
Yep. I 100% agree.
Yeah. But that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Check out our Instagram. I will be uploading the journal and like some of the psychotic things. So if
It
you
might
are
get
interested,
go look at it now because it might get taken down. People are going to report
yeah,
these pictures of the journal.
there's going to be a Netflix documentary on me one day. Be like, we found all this psychotic scribbling, and who is Lord Sekna or whatever. But yeah, thank you so much, and be sure to rate, like, subscribe, do all that silly stuff, but mostly just go play games, have fun,
Yeah, thank you for
live
rolling
life.
on. Yeah, and thank you for putting this together, Brian. You did an amazing job, and to
hmm
all of you, thank you for rolling along with us.
Now roll for initiative,
Roll for a rate, like, and subscribe.
roll for like subscribe. All right, bye guys.
Bye.